A huge welcome, everyone, to APN's session, parallel session 2 on partnerships for sustainability. My name is Linda Stevenson, and I am the acting director of the Secretariat of the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, and we are based in Kobe in Japan. This year's ISAP showcases how integrated approaches address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution. By promoting synergies and minimizing trade-offs, we pave the way for transformative change in the Pacific region and beyond at the global level. Our particular session today on partnerships for sustainability, I believe, is key to achieving these goals and fostering collaboration and supporting innovative solutions for a sustainable future. With the escalating global challenges that we face today, fostering partnerships is crucial for addressing the complex issues and achieving sustainability. As highlighted, particularly since this is about partnerships, specifically Sustainable Development Goal 17, SDG 17. So the session, as I mentioned, which is organized by the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, will showcase 3 research and capacity development projects undertaken by esteemed researchers from the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, otherwise, as we all know today, is IGES. And these projects will showcase what we hope is the transformative potential of partnerships and collaborative transformations. In addition, Future Earth will contribute key feedback on 3 critical presentations and facilitate, we hope, will be a very dynamic discussion featuring the IGES researchers and engaging the audience. We think that engaging the audience is really crucial for a meaningful dialogue. And importantly, this session, which is supported by the Ministry of the Environment of Japan, really underscores the efficacy of collaboration in driving policy-relevant global change and sustainability research across the Asia-Pacific region. We have 3 speakers, and let me introduce our first speaker. So Dr. Pankaj Kumar of IGES, his presentation on enhancing community adaptation in vulnerable riverine islands will focus on how socio-hydrology can enhance social resilience and adaptive water management in vulnerable riverine islands in Bangladesh, in India, and in Vietnam. He'll demonstrate how applying human-water relations, we can maintain the hydrological cycle and meet local needs as well. We can continue to engage stakeholders through these social hydrological models, thus ensuring sustainable water management and fostering long-term collaboration. We say collaboration, but I think partnerships is so much stronger. Moving on to Dr. Benaya Shivakoti, also of IGES. Dr. Benaya's presentation on catalyzing local adaptation innovations We'll look at strengthening local adaptation by integrating indigenous knowledge in Nepal, in Vietnam, and in Fiji. He will address how partnerships are critical for fostering regional collaboration and maximizing the impact of locally led adaptation initiatives and promoting continuous learning and practical implementation at the local level for sustainable development. Dr. Prabhakar's presentation. I'm sorry, Dr. Prabhakar, I know you're online, and I apologize for misinterpreting your name. His presentation on integrating climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction will talk about enhancing resilience through regional partnerships. And this presentation will show that through this process of integrating adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and loss and damage strategies with robust partnerships, and I'm going to keep mentioning this word partnerships, we can build a resilient future. And before I move on to the next slide, I think it's really crucial to say a few points about each of these speakers. When you talk about Dr. Pankaj Kumar from IGES, and he is at the top of this presentation, through a project that had possibly a financial input of around maybe $140,000 over 3 years. This project leader was able to produce over 16 peer-reviewed publications. That would not have been possible without the regional partners that he had in India, in Vietnam, in Bangladesh, and in Japan. So that's an example of how important partnerships are for sustainability. Looking at Dr. Binaya Shivakoti from IGES, he is really focusing on locally led adaptation. And this is local, very community level adaptation. And there are 6 institutions involved from Nepal, from Fiji, and from Vietnam. There's a slightly different flavor there. And I hope that he can introduce this project and let you see the kinds of activities that are being done to support partnerships for sustainability. And Dr. Prakar, through his work on not just one project, but looking at projects on non-economic loss and damage, slow onset loss and damage, he's able to show how he brought together 10 countries in South and Southeast Asia. And that's with limited funding from APN. And let me emphasize, APN is a network. We can provide funds, but our funds are limited. So it takes these kinds of partnerships to sustain these activities and to take them beyond what we're doing now. APN is a knowledge broker. We can take all the information that we gather, that we glean from each of the projects, and we can synthesize them. So we can be used in that aspect as well. We are the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research. And I have, oh, my time's over. My goodness. Well, let me just, already. And I'm the first speaker. So moving on, so to lead this session in the spirit of partnerships for sustainability, we have Dr. Fumiko Kasuga, who is the Deputy Director of the Global Earth, the Future Earth Future Earth Japan Global Hub, and she will be with Dr. Ria Lambino, and they will provide us with a panel discussion. Our Nafisa Ismail from APN Secretariat will will provide an interaction opportunity for the audience through Mentimeter. And for those of you in Japanese, there is a code up there. Please feel free to link to that code now. And then we have closing and vote remarks from our distinguished guest from the Ministry of the Environment of Japan. And as my time is up, I think I want to say that Partnerships for sustainability. This approach is crucial for successfully addressing the triple planetary crisis. And I hope that the session will clearly demonstrate this. And I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm so sorry I ran over. Not a good start. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Linda Stevenson, for the nice introduction and setting up the tone. So before we move on to our next session, I would like to invite our speakers, Dr. Pankaj Kumar and Dr. Binaya Shivakoti, up on the stage, as well as Dr. Prabhakar to be featured on the Zoom. That said, I welcome our first speaker, Dr. Pankaj Kumar, for his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Pankaj.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are not feeling sleepy. So my name is Pankaj Kumar. I'm working as a research manager in the department called Adaptation and Water in the IGES, as well as I'm heading the IBES technical support unit on scenario and models. Along with that, I'm also involved in different global assessments. I'm the lead author for, currently working as a lead author for IBES Nexus assessment, as well as Global Environment Outlook 7. I was also involved in IPCC AR5 and AR6. So I have a pretty good record of involving in the global assessment so far. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I'm looking into that. One slide previously, back, please. Yeah. So the title for my presentation is Enhancing Community Adaptation in Vulnerable Riverine Island. This presentation is mainly the output. I'm going to summarize the output of the APN project, which I have laid before. And basically, because I was involved in the IBES Nexus assessment, and that's what I wanted to reflect, that Nexus assessment, how we can implement this Nexus framework into the ground. So this is all about I'm going to talk. So next slide, please. This is the latest report showing the water scarcity in different months of the year around the world and policy-related challenges. If you're seeing in the graph above on the left side, then you can see that there are number of months in a year in different part of world which is facing severe water scarcity. But if you are looking into the overall water availability, then you can see that enough water is available for per capita availability is enough. But the main problem is spatio-temporal availability of those fresh water. So that's why looking into this figure, which is showing the monthly water scarcity, is pretty much valuable for scientists working into the water sector management. And next, the below graph, which is showing the policy-related challenges. And the red dots, you can see, although the words are pretty small one, you cannot read it. But it is showing the red dots are showing the policy-related challenges where it is severe policy-related challenges. And if you're looking into around the world, most of the countries are facing policy-related challenges to manage water resources, as well as because water resources is the limiting factor for governing water security and agricultural activities and overall human well-being. On the right-hand side, we can see the planetary 9 different components of planetary health or planetary boundaries. As of now, 6 out of 9 components have reached their safe operating system. It means it is time to act now, unless it will be too late to do anything. Looking into the freshwater system, the situation is not that scarce right now or not that severe. So still for the freshwater system, we have sufficient time if we act together. If we work in silos, it will not solve the problem because water is the limiting factor for human well-being and other economic activities. Next slide, please. When we are looking into different drivers and pressure which causes water insecurity or water-related issues, in my project, I have considered 3 different key drivers. That is climate change, population growth, land use land cover change. And I have used different simulations. I'm not going to go into detail which model I have used, but I'll be just summarizing what is the key outcome of that one. Say, for example, in case of climate change, I have used extreme case like RCP 8.5 and a moderate situation, RCP 4.5. Similarly, we have projected population growth and then land use land cover changes using different models, and then given those value into the as an input to our model, that is socio-hydrological model, and which is showing the nexus approach of to solve the water scarcity as well as its link with the human well-being. And the last one is the development plan. Why I have taken this development plan? Because development plan is summarizing all the adaptive and mitigative measures, which is all the local government is planning ahead for the future, for managing the future water security. So I have to consider this adaptive and mitigative plans in my model in order to see what are the knowledge gap existing and how we can mitigate or how we can fill that knowledge gap. And because the water resource management is a complex issue, that's why we need an integrative water resource management. So what is this all about? And why do we need that? Once we have water scarcity, then we are mainly facing the flooding or water pollution, or then the local public become vulnerable. And that's why we need integrated water resource management. And in that one, we need a bottom-up approach as well as top-down approach. Next slide, please. So what we have done and why we have taken the riverine island, because it's a huge productive land and very prone to hydrometeorological hazards, densely populated areas, and extreme effects of community because of their poor adaptive measures or capacities. So the objective was to see how socio-hydrological approach can help to design possible adaptation and mitigation measures for positively enhancing the relation between water resource and human well-being. So we have proposed in this project, we have proposed how the normal PDCA cycle, how citizens' science can help to enhance this model output in achieving the water security. Next slide, please. I'm not going into detail, but in the methodological component, you can see we have adopted two parts. One is social part and one is the numerical part, the natural science part. And we have integrated them both to achieve both social hydrological cycle as well as its impact on socio-economic component. And we have taken both quantitative as well as qualitative approach. Data set was water quality, quantity. Some primary data was also generated in case it is not there. And socioeconomic data was generated as well. Next slide, please. Previous slide, please. Yeah, so this is mainly, I'm going to show you, this is the nut and shell, the summary of the socio-hydrological approach which we have applied. This is one of the case in Bangladesh, where because of the extreme weather condition, there is like inconsistent precipitation temperature, quantitative and qualitative degradation, stored water. And because of the population density high, the groundwater extraction was high. And that's why, and because of the extreme weather condition, groundwater recharge was reducing. And as a result, soil salinity was increased and crop production cost was increased. And that's why profit got decreased. And that's why people are having financial hardship. And that's why they are forced to migrate to different places. That's why occupation shift has taken place. This is the whole nexus picture. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show just 1 minute last. So this is the case for all of this vulnerable situation. People are forced to migrate in India and Vietnam, but this is the contrast picture I have figured out in Bangladesh, where in some pocket, people are not migrating to different pockets because even they are very, very much vulnerable. The main reason was the social bonding and local help was very much crucial in order to tide up the situation, very severe situation in the vulnerable condition. So that's the another case. And we have published it in a very high impact factor journal, that is Global Environmental Changes. So next slide, please. So the key take away message is it is evident that triple boundary crisis with land degradation result into water insecurity. Since water is the limiting factor to socioeconomic growth, it leads to a series of cascading effects like changes in the livelihood, financial hardship, mental health, occupation shift, migration, and loss of self-esteem. Socio-hydrological approach, which is an holistic approach, was successfully applied to explore the nexus of human-water relationship at different scale in different study areas. Next slide, please. So these are the, as Linda mentioned, that we have successfully we had significant output from this project. We have published 13 peer-reviewed journal articles, 2 book chapters, and 1 proceedings. I'm very much thankful to APN for providing this financial help, and looking forward to discuss this during this panel discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for the fruitful presentation. So please now let me welcome our second speaker, Dr. Binaya Shivakoti, to the stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nafisa, for your kind introduction. Hi, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Binaya Shivakoti, and today I will be talking about one of the project. Actually, Linda was very generous to say she provide funding, but this project is actually co-implementation between APN and IGES. So this is one of the kind of experimental thing we are doing together. And because time is limited, so let me directly jump into my presentation. So we are talking about how we could catalyze local adaptation innovation by linking indigenous knowledge with national commitment through strong partnership. And next slide, please. And with this, what I would like to say is like, if we see the practice of adaptation, even in the previous session, if you see that a lot of things has happened on capacity building, but we can't trace how this is done and what are the impacts. And as we go down to the adaptation action, we realize that most of the adaptation has to be local, but the local communities face a huge barrier. So the question was how we could catalyze local adaptation innovation by addressing the capacity gaps at the local level. And in this context, we are partnering with our, of course, APN and with ISIMOD and Himalayan University Consortium and Practical Action in Nepal, Agriculture and Forestry Development Center in Vietnam, and University of Sunshine Coast in Australia, but based in Fiji. And what we are trying to do in this case is we are using this concept of locally led adaptation, which has been released during the COP. And basically it has 8 principles. So I'm not going to the 8 principles. The basic idea is how we develop the decision making to the local community, how local community can take all the decisions about the adaptation needs and priorities with minimal intervention from outside. So that is how we build that capacity. It's not about we want to do or we don't want to do. Unless and until we build that capacity, the adaptation is not going to happen locally led. In that context, one of the entry point for us is how we could use the application of traditional, indigenous, and local knowledge system. Because this knowledge system are the initial coping response. Whenever there is a climate change impact, people resort to this knowledge system that are built for hundreds of years. So we are trying to see if we can infuse this local and traditional knowledge system along with modern science. And what we are doing is the partners, we have a very excellent partners here. We are proposing this as a co-development practice. And what we have done is partners doesn't mean like we say what you need to do. We have given them total freedom on what they are doing. Basically, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we want to capitalize what partners has been already doing so that we can understand and scale up, understand and see how we could scale up those good practices. And of course, we are also seeing the youth engagement here, because youth are the future and they are the one who has to deal with all climate change impact and the problems, I mean, that is shaped as a triple planetary crisis. And here we are also taking into the regional cross-learning, including, of course, the APPLAT is one of the Asia Pacific climate adaptation adaptation platform by Ministry of, by Japanese government. And this project is actually aimed to contribute this regional collaboration through APPLAT. And what we are ultimately aiming is by using these 3 cases in 3 countries, we want to develop readily upscalable model of to accelerate local adaptation innovation. So we have principle of locally led adaptation, but we don't know how to put that into practice. So we want to see how we can bring the investable ideas first. Second, how we strengthen bottom-up adaptation communication. What means how the need, priorities, and issues at the local level can be properly communicated to the upstream, and how we could facilitate channeling of the funds to the local level. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I will be briefly introducing about what we are doing in the 3 sites. First, let me go to the Rolpa and Dan distinguished in Western Nepal. Basically, the climate risks are common in all areas like changing rainfall, drought, flood, heat waves, forest fire, and basically there is over-reliance on costly modern farming or modern technology. While there has been a loss of local cultivar and tradition, as well as a huge problem is the youth migration, because they don't see the opportunity and climate change is pushing them to leave the area. So, but adaptation is happening there, but at a small scale. So how we could upscale this action? And we have identified some opportunities like climate information service, climate field school, adaptive farming, flood adaptive vegetable nursery, so such kind of thing. And one of the solution we are working now is how we revitalize traditional and indigenous knowledge system by integrating climate smart agriculture, promotion of local cultivar, and integration of modern and traditional farming. Next slide, please. And another area is in northern Vietnam. It's a mountainous area. The problems are similar, but there are structural inequalities faced by the vulnerable group, especially the ethnic minorities. And what we are doing, this area is close to Hanoi. And because of time, let me directly jump into solution. We are thinking about how ecotourism built on agri-heritage and resource circulation lifestyle could be promoted. So adaptation doesn't mean like constructing dam or prevention measure. It also means how we create financial independence or option for livelihood diversification. So that's is an entry point. That's the beauty of locally led adaptation. We don't say what you need to build, but how you want to proceed with the problems that you are facing. Next slide, please. Okay, and next is in Fiji. Sorry for the time. Here, I think it's also same thing. The problem here is Fiji is a small island. So the question is there is nowhere to go. The challenge is how we could ensure that people will be able to live in the same location. And the question similar to Vietnam, here we are looking into livelihood diversification for community resilience. So ecotourism, handicraft, salt making, they provide some income generating opportunity, create financial literacy. Sorry, I can't see the next point. And the key point is how we create a solution so that even in this island country, we can build the resilience and what are the intervention that helps people to face the climate change. Next slide, please. As my final slide. And the key message here is we want to promote locally led adaptation innovation, but in practice by addressing capacity gap. Like for example, how local people can clearly understand and interpret climate impact, how to use inbuilt knowledge system so that we recognize those knowledge system and they have a confidence and there is a high acceptance. So there is a huge benefit of doing this. And also how we address the adaptive current coping responses, which are usually ad hoc and unplanned. And ultimately, how we gradually build the decision-making power. So that we can link this decision-making power with the available financial resources. Second message is we need to use indigenous and local knowledge system, not just for its conservation, but with integration of the science and technology, so modern science and technology, so that we can find an innovative solution that works to address the real problem on the ground. And then we want to see, when we say upscale and upscaling this locally level, the point is, can we make this approach a seed for advancing transformative adaptation, which means how we upscale and do it rapidly. So these two conditions are very important so that the successful practices. And finally, partnership, as you can see, is very critical because we need to do fast. We need to do quicker learning. We need to foster regional collaboration. And also it helps to use effective use of resources and finances. And also this collaboration is important to build new kind of education system, not university education system, but kind of education system that is field-based, which can directly mobilize youth, prepare their for the job, make them ready for the job, and they can continue. So that kind of education system also we need to think. So with that, I thank all of you. And once again, I'd like to thank APN for generous support, and we have a very good partnership. And I really look forward to strengthening and doing new things with APN. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shivakoti, for sharing your inputs. Up next is Dr. Prabhakar, connecting with us online. Whenever you're ready, Dr. Prabhakar.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you very much. At the outset, I would like to thank APN for giving me this opportunity. My name is Prabhakar. I work with the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies as a principal policy researcher. Initially, APN asked me to present a particular project case, but when I looked at the objective of the session, I thought probably all the projects that we implemented under APN can provide certain messages on how the partnerships can enhance opportunities for resilience building. So with that in mind, so what I'm doing right now is to present you the 5 cases that we implemented using the APN support. So throughout this presentation, I will be using all these 5 projects. Just briefly, the first project is about developing the training modules for the CC and DRR community in the entire ASEAN region. That means that entire ASEAN countries are involved. It's a 3-year project. That has given us a very good sound basis footing for us to build a very good partnership to begin with in the ASEAN region. That helped us actually to build upon those partnerships and then develop the project proposals for rest of the projects that I have listed here. The second project is on the adaptation metrics. How do we measure the adaptation? The third one is on the non-economic loss and damages. Again, the focus is what adaptation practices gives us better non-economic adaptation benefits. And the fourth one is about the community insurance programs. How do we evaluate the DRR CCA outcomes of these insurance programs? And finally, the slow onset events in the ASEAN region and what are the policy solutions? So if you look at in terms of the partnership promotion across all these projects, you can see that these are truly regional projects. Many projects involved more than 4 countries. Some of them involved even 8 or 9 countries as well. Given the limited finances, it means that the willingness of the partners to engage with us in a longer term research project in producing a very effective and cutting edge research fields, which they are. Secondly, it also means that the interdisciplinary nature of the subject that climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction it is, we had to involve multi-sectoral or multi-disciplinary researchers. For example, in the table below, you can see nearly 10 different domains of the expertise were involved in most of the or across all the 5 projects that I have listed here. In terms of the participation of the stakeholders, when we say stakeholders, it is not the core project of the core team of the project, but in fact the stakeholders who are benefiting from the projects. You can see that stakeholders ranging from government officers, national level policymakers, NGOs, And across all the projects, we endeavored to include educational institutions and training institutions, so that whatever the learnings of the project can be carried forward to capacity development. And depending on the need of the project, we have included certain focused stakeholders, such as farmers and related organizations, cultural organizations. For example, in the case of the non-economic loss and damage project, the cultural erosion because the climatic stresses is one of the global focus. So that helped us to understand what are the priorities of the cultural organizations, what kind of impacts that they were facing because of the extreme events. So we could able to compare between two developmental contexts of the Bangladesh and Japan. And in some other cases, we had to approach very close-knit groups such as insurance service providers. As you know, insurance service providers, which are private companies, they have very least incentive to collaborate with others. And because of the nature of the project, we had to approach in multiple countries the insurance service providers, so that they can share the data with us, which has become very crucial in our analysis of the insurance products, which is not otherwise possible without them being the collaborators in the project. So why such a collaboration is needed? If you look at the very nature of the DRR and CCA, we all agree that they are very much interdisciplinary fields. And often we tend to differentiate the difference between the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. While we start our projects with the hope that we want to develop a transdisciplinary research agenda and research methodology and things like that, but at the end of the day, because of the paucity of the time and the resources, probably for a small scale research projects, we realize that the interdisciplinary approach is much very faster, given the familiarity of the research partners as well as the stakeholders that we would like to target. It becomes much easy if you follow interdisciplinary approach than compared to transdisciplinary. And especially, as I said, given the very much focus of some of these institutions, for example, if you look at the researchers which are involved, the researcher who is representing the gender or socio-economic issues will not be understood by a water resources specialist who was doing, groundwater modeling in one of our projects. So it becomes sometimes a very challenging to bring across and to make them understand what is the core objective of the project, because every researcher has her methodologies honed in, and they are very good in their methodologies. But to kind of what you say, orient them towards a common objective, it's a little bit of a problematic, and it takes a little bit of time and multiple efforts. And this is where we thought probably APN funding is a little bit restrictive, because we will not have a lot of resources to physically meet, because many of these projects happened before APN, before the COVID. So there was a lot of opportunity to kind of meet physically and then have exchanges of the methodologies and discuss where we are lacking and where we can improve, which was possible, but only because we were engaged with the broader processes outside the project. So we were able to use those processes and physically meet and try to develop the methodologies which are agreeable to across all the domains of the expertise which are involved in the project. The second challenge that we often see is working with the stakeholders. I know that I just crossed 30 seconds beyond my given time. I'll just finish one more slide. Is that impressing upon the stakeholders that the project is trying to target. In some cases, the risk insurance, they don't really, it's very unfair to say that they don't care the real outcome of the adaptation outcomes. But the stakeholders, like insurance stakeholders, they really are interested in quantifiable outcomes. But if you look at the non-economic loss and damages and many other NGOs that we work, they keep on harping on very qualitative outcomes of the insurance, which cannot be quantified and cannot be reliably widely used within the insurance product development. So that is where we had to do a lot of communication, and then a lot of disagreements among the team as well as the stakeholders, because when we were approaching the Philippines insurance organization or even Indian insurance companies, this is the overall crux of the discussion on how do we find a common ground between a quantifiable and non-quantifiable outcomes of the insurance products that we would like to see in the context of the climate change adaptation. So these are some of the outcomes and outputs that we could able to produce across various domains. So the conclusion is that if you really want to sustain the project, it is not just the amount of the funding that goes in, and probably I would put my efforts more on finding the reliable partner for your project who has very good skills, who has a very good access to various stakeholder base, including community level, policy level, private sector. So these are the very good determinants for a policy-driven, solution-oriented research based on the understanding that we received. And secondly, don't try to engage with several countries unless otherwise you have matching funding, or otherwise you have platforms where you can bring in the opportunities to meet physically, because driving multi-country projects is really nuts, and you will go really mad because the cultural differences between researchers and the priorities, there are a lot of variables that makes things very dicey and also very uncertain at times. So having very good understanding and like-minded researchers who has a better access to within their own expertise as well as the policy level access is very important for a policy-driven research. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Prabhakar, for the insightful inputs. My apologies to the audience and participants due to time limitation. We now move into session 3. Please now let me invite Dr. Fumiko Kasuga, Director of Future Earth Japan, and Dr. Ria Lambino, Deputy Director of Future Earth Japan, to the stage for the panelist session.
So good afternoon. My name is Fumiko Kasuga, Global Hub Director Japan at Future Earth Global Secretariat. And on behalf of Future Earth, I would like to thank Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, APN, for inviting Future Earth to join this very exciting session. So far, we have learned from 3 excellent speakers on the importance of the nexus, integration, and inclusiveness in promoting partnership in collaboration and for developing partnership in the research of sustainability. APN and Future Earth are sharing the nature as being a network and contributing to sustainability. Future Earth is a global network and we're based on 27 mostly discipline-based research network and 20 national committees or entities. And but we're also promoting cross-sectorial, cross-cutting initiatives. And but we are not funders. We're supporting and facilitating research networks, not only within the researchers, but also with the interaction with stakeholders outside the academia. APN and Future Earth have been taking a parallel pathway so far, but it is time to more actively collaborate. And with the previous speakers, as I introduced, they have very key, important keywords. And from now, I expect to have more integration or synergetic activities for further enhancing our voices to be visible and to be more powerful in Asia and to the global community, to promote urgent, urgency in solving their problems and for achieving a safe and just future for everyone. With this, I'm looking forward to even more active panel discussions. And I'd like to invite my close colleague, Global Hub Deputy Director and in Japan Hub, Dr. Ria Lambino, to take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasuga, for that excellent intervention. So at this point, I'd like to just facilitate a short panel discussion. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to focus a bit on the theme for this for this session, which is really on partners for sustainability. And as Dr. Linda earlier emphasized, this theme really relates to SDG 17 and with the goal of establishing global partnerships for sustainability. And our three speakers earlier shared very, very good and concrete examples of partnerships, but I'd like to dive a bit more into that. So I prepared a list of questions, but I will just maybe ask for quick comments from the speakers. I'd like to address maybe the first question specifically to Dr. Kumar. You talked about working in different countries, in different sites, using your social hydrological approach. And I wanted to ask if you can share a bit more about how you're able to foster knowledge sharing, especially with the different local partners that you've had.
Thank you so much. When we are talking about socio-hydrological approach, it's also a model which depicts how we can use Nexus, which is a complex approach itself into the ground. For that matter, we do have in the contemporary scientific literature, we do have models which is to be used for the scientific community. And those models are retrofitting in nature. It means since we set up the model and since we produce the scenarios, and why we produce this scenario in order to answer what if question for the policymaker or decision makers. And if we have the retrofitting model, so since the beginning of the model setup, all the relevant stakeholders or all the partners, they have a say to chip in order to provide which is the key drivers and pressures. And once they fit their own desired factors or drivers, they have an ownership of the output. And that's how the acceptance of the model output is more in compare when we are doing the one-sided modeling from the researcher side. So that's what in the socio-hydrological approach, we have clearly shown that using a retrofitting model is very much useful to showcase a Nexus implementation in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very, very interesting, and I think it's a great example of how you're able to not just foster sharing of knowledge, but really generate ownership of that data and knowledge from the local stakeholders as well. Earlier, Dr. Prabhakar shared some of the challenges that they have experienced in the different projects that they've shared, but I do want to learn from the experience of Dr. Sorry, I may not be able to pronounce it, Shivakoti, especially with regard to how you've worked very closely with local partners, and especially the indigenous knowledge generation. So can you share a bit more about some of the challenges that you've experienced with regard to engaging these different partners, and how you've able to sort of overcome them?
Okay, yes, thank you so much. I think at the local level, I think it depends on how you approach. The challenges are, of course, there. The main reason there are challenges is because with years of effort, the community at the ground are not getting the desired result. So there's a kind of frustration there. And what we are trying to do is let them understand what they possess. For example, in this case, indigenous and local knowledge system. So the point we are trying to say is this system that has helped them for a long, long time, they are still valid to address the climate impact, but not sufficient. So that's why we also need some kind of external support. So external support doesn't mean we bring some technologies and share them, but we mean we need to let them understand what is the real problem there and also co-design the solution together. So that is what we are trying to do. And challenges we have, I think the most important challenge we are is climate change impacts are intensifying. And because of that, people are reluctant, not reluctant, but people have a little bit of confusion, why direction they should move. And that's what I mentioned in my presentation also. A huge youth migration is happening in most of the cases because the opportunities at the ground are at their location are limited. So we are saying if we design some kind of adaptation approach, which can co-create job opportunities on the ground, and by utilizing their inbuilt knowledge system and also bringing the innovation, that might be a kind of a way forward to really realize a transformative approach of adaptation. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And we talked about a bit of a challenge, but I also want to bring this question, next question to Dr. Prabhakar. Can you talk a bit about the enabling factors that have facilitated, the strong partnerships in the different projects that we've shared earlier? Maybe that could help us in terms of thinking through how we could scale up and how we could build these types of partnerships even more.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that excellent discussion session. So at the cost of sounding preaching, it's nothing new that we don't know, but the only thing is how different factors fall in place at the right time and the right place, especially in the context of a project. We have seen that the researchers, especially in an interdisciplinary project, they need to have incentives to produce their own research outputs. Whereas at the project level, there are incentives to produce research outputs at the project level as well, not just at the researcher level. And while we, especially from IGES, we focus very much on the policy solutions. But many researchers that we engage in our projects, they are very much from hardcore research and educational institutions. Often they may not tend to have as much stakeholder orientation as that IGES would like to have. So this is a kind of a long-term engagement and trying to understand, and of course they understand, but then their systems and their institutional level, they are not very well placed with organizing a consultation workshop, for example, in a university. University research is very much focused on directly develop a questionnaire and go to the ground and collect the data. Consultations is a kind of, probably it's a very new in a university education even today. So it's a kind of learning together and trying to finding a middle ground, and that is where I think the balancing ownership at different levels, it goes a long way in terms of the partnership building. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I've been advised that we need to wrap up. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm really grateful for some of the insights that our speakers have shared with us today. Talking about ownership, getting consensus, and maybe reaching out to different stakeholders, getting them to sharing the knowledge production, the co-design part that you mentioned, and looking at, there are many challenges obviously, but there are also it's important to understand the different contexts that we're all faced in, and for researchers, for scientists to continue to reach out and just be able to establish these strong partnerships, I think are quite important for sustainability. So maybe as a kind of homework for all of us, I do want us to think through about, global partnerships are the goal for that towards sustainability is maybe still a bit far, but perhaps we could think about what other partnerships need to happen at different scales, at what level, and also how do we make these things happen so that we could go towards our goal of sustainability. All right, so thank you very much to our speakers, and our guests and to all of you also. I turn it over to Nafessa.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all panelists, and thank you also, Dr. Prabhakar, for your input. For the next session, I would like to start a Menti session with all of you, and that's it. If you could use your phone and scan the QR code, which is on the display or on your table as well. And once you logged in, we would be able to see you there. Also, you can use your browser to type www.menti.com and input the code as you can see on the display. And I would like to also invite our online audience to also join these Mentimeter sessions with us. All right, so we can go for the first question. From my screen, I could already see some information. Oh, right. So the question is, what are the key elements of a successful partnership for sustainability? And we got 13 responses so far. Some mentioning involvement of stakeholders from different levels, mutual reliability, which is important, trust, trust. Okay. Common goals, having the money, mutual reliability, co-designing, combined resources, and greater networking. All right, we got 22 responses and 24, 35. Whoa, okay. Still going. Openness, shared aspirations, yes, having a common goal, co-design, communication, and knowledge sharing across sectors and partners. With that, I would like to move on to the second Mentimeter question. All right, the second one, what are the key elements of a successful partnership for sustainability? So far we have okay. 2 responses. Finance, competition, issues of power, language again, finance, mode of operation, lack of accountability, diverse stakeholder objectives, cultural differences. And you can see again, finance, language, priority differences, yes, communication, not having enough awareness, infrastructure, money, language come up again. Inadequate understanding of each other's priorities and needs, yes, not matching, not listening to each other, divergent visions, capacity gap, lack of trust, innovation, lack of communication and insufficient engagement to implement activities. So far we got 25 responses, which is I think is okay. We can move to one last question, Mentimeter, right? All right. Will be last one. All right. So the third one, what innovation approaches have you seen in fostering partnerships for sustainability? Co-design. I guess for this one, we wait up to maybe another 3 or 4 responses. All right, locally led, cooperation, co-delivery, insurance, co-design. All right, I think public-private partnerships, yes. Make local champions, act as first, co-planning again. All right. Due to time limitation, I'm really sorry. I have to end the Mentimeter session, and we now have to move on to our closing session. And that said, I would like to thank all the in-person audience and also the audience from the online for our Mentimeter session. And now I would like to invite Mr. Yukihiro Haisa, Director of the Climate Change Science and Adaptation Office, Global Environmental Bureau, Ministry of the Environment, Japan, who is also the APN National Focal Point for Japan. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. And my role here is just to say thank you. And because of the time constraint, and I think it was 1 hour is very short to cover the issue of partnership, which usually need to have more time, like 4 days or 5 days. So thank you very much for all the presentators for the excellent presentations. And I will not try to wrap up this session. We all heard the importance of integrated approaches or partnerships among various stakeholders and enhanced collaboration between sectors in tackling the triple crisis. They are essential and fundamental, but we know it is sometimes, or in most cases, very difficult to make them happen. In Japan, the Climate Change Adaptation Act enacted 5 years ago, and now the assessment process on its implementation is undergoing. In the draft report, we identify 2 specific areas: further accumulation of scientific knowledges and enhanced communication with citizens as prioritized actions to be taken. This is because effective partnership can only be built through very good communication, and a good communication can only be performed based on shared knowledge, from traditional knowledge to scientific knowledge, just observed here in this session. I really thank for all of you, including the audience, being involved in this session very actively. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haisa, for the closing remarks. I would like to also thank the in-person and online audience for your kind time and participation at our session today. With that, we conclude this session. Thank you.